Excellent. All right. So thank you everyone for being here. As mentioned, if you are here to learn about what funding and grant opportunities there are for your business, you are in the right place. We do have a special guest today that's going to help us dig into loans, so Charles Kayataba. But just before we get into that, I do want to give you an overview of some of the various grants that are out there. And the best way to find out about a lot of this funding is through the spreadsheet that we created, which I'm going to be sharing with you. So I'm going to put that into the chat. So if you want to follow along, you can hop into the spreadsheet. So funding.ryan'oneil.com. All right. So that link will take you to this spreadsheet here. And so this spreadsheet is the first step in everything that I do with trying to find grants for clients or people that we work with. So it is something that we try to keep as up to date as possible. So let me do the initial, what we call that, presentation. And then we're going to be using that spreadsheet as a reference guide. So if you want to get access and follow along, it is there for you. All right. And as I mentioned, if you're here looking for different funding and grant opportunities for your business or your nonprofit that you're running, you are in the right place. A couple of housekeeping items. If your name on Zoom is like Zoom user or Samsung or iPhone, please do change it to your name so that way if you're asking a question, we know who's asking the question. No worries about turning on your camera. If you're unmuting yourself in the Q&A and want to show your face, feel free. Oh, pardon. Oh, sorry about that. And yeah, if as I'm going through, if you have a question that pops up about what I'm talking about, feel free to raise your hand. Otherwise, hey, we're all here to find out what funding is here. So let's be respectful of each other and use the chat because typically I'll go through the presentation and then we will have a Q&A area. But if you don't want to forget your question, feel free to put it into the chat and that way we'll be able to address it once we finish. So as the presentation itself is going on, please do mute your mic. All right. Oh. And one thing we do also want to do is acknowledge the first peoples of this traditional land. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the effect of residential schools and colonialism on Indigenous families and communities, and to consider how we are and can each in our own way try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. All right, so thank you for that. All right, and real quick, want to let you know a bit about Empowered Forex. Oh, did I skip to myself? Well, I guess I'll let you know about myself first. So my name is Ryan Knight, one of the key facilitators today. I do consider myself a serial social entrepreneur. I run a social enterprise called Detailing Nights, which provides mobile waterless car cleaning, and also Service Kingdom, which provides consultant support for people looking to start social enterprises. So with nonprofits that are looking to create an income generating activity or for profits that are wanting to have more impact in the community and run a social enterprise. Also, executives power ups that helps business owners in put in that team that they need to make their business more investable so that they can raise more money. And Black Panther's Cage, which you could think of Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, but with Black founders pitching to Black investors. And of course, I'm the co-founder of the Afro Caribbean Business Network and part of the Empowered Forex business crew. So currently, we really exist to help businesses increase their capacity and to create an asset that they can leave to their family and grow generational wealth. So just a bit of background about ACBN. So the Afro Caribbean Business Network, we really created just over 6 years ago because as I was running my company, Detailing Nights, I realized there weren't a lot of Black focused business organizations that I could turn to help grow our company exponentially. So we brought 6 other business owners together, said, could we create this entity that would sit down with the business owner, figure out what stage they're in, and then help them create a strategy to grow their companies. And thus ACBN was born. And over the past 6 years, we've been able to work with over 6,000 entrepreneurs in the Black community. We are seeing a large percentage are female entrepreneurs, and about 91% are the business founders and the CEO. But what we're most proud of is being able to partner with 40 other Black focused business organizations, part of the Black entrepreneurship ecosystem. So now our reach extends over 20,000, actually it's close to 30,000 Black entrepreneurs across Canada. So no matter what stage your business is in or which area of Canada you're in, we're able to point you in the right direction and get you the right supports that you need. And real quick, the pillars that we stand on, of course, entrepreneurship. I believe it's the most powerful tool that we can use to build generational wealth and support those that are looking to create an asset for their own family and for the community. Is the best tool that I've seen that can build economic empowerment. And the way that we use convening is to now share notes. So we're here on a virtual platform or we get together in person with our conferences or our symposium or just our networking events, but it's all about how do we find out what's working and share those notes with each other. So, and of course, we're here talking about access to funding. So being able to show you what's worked with our journey on getting grants and getting funding, and then share that with you so that you know what's available and also the process to be successful with those applications. And so I like to show this slide just to give you an idea of the breadth of the types of funding that's out there. And it ranges from pitch competitions to grants from the city, from the province, from the federal government, to sponsorship and donations from corporations, and even loans that we've been able to get over the past 6 years with ACBN, and also similar effects with Detailing Nights getting grants and different loan products. But now you'll also notice it ranges as low as $500 all the way up to over $1 million. And one thing that, if you've been on these sessions before, I talk about, I don't consider myself an academic grant writer, but I do consider myself a grant hunter. So looking at any and every type of grant or funding opportunity that we qualify for, we want to make sure to get those applications in so that we don't miss money just because we didn't put our application in. And beyond us being successful with grants, it's really about being able to help others also be successful. So doing these info sessions or the grant writing working groups, or doing the grant writing for you with our team of grant writers, we've been able to support organizations like Rescue Youth International, where they didn't have the time and bandwidth to be researching and the writing the grants, but they were doing great work working with youth in the education and justice system in the Peel region. So we were able to partner with them and help them get access to the investment readiness program. And on the other side, with Custodia being a for-profit company, them not realizing that they were running a social enterprise and qualified for the available grant at the time, which was the investment readiness program. So them being successful with getting funding as well, And even New Life Project, shout out to Brenda in Ottawa, who again didn't have the time to be researching and writing. We were able to work with them to identify a grant, which was the Supporting Black Communities Initiative, and help them with the writing so that they were successful. But beyond us helping those with their own applications, we've also been able to get creative to either be a trustee for those that are applying for a grant, similar to Seventh Adventist Church, who didn't qualify on their own based on how they were structured, but ACBN was able to be the lead in the application, and then they like pretty much funneled the money through us as a trustee, and they were able to secure the 325,000 to do renovations. And Youth Village, who actually partnered with ACBN to be on a grant that we were submitting. So even though they were a new upcoming organization, they now were able to be part of our grant, get up to $60,000 so that they're not starting their organization from scratch. They actually had some infrastructure and being able to work with us. So, like I said, when we're on the hunt for funding, sometimes we have to get creative. So, always have conversations with us to see what your situation is and then what is possible with the type of funding that you're looking for. So one thing to outline is that we do support entrepreneurs and organizations with business plan development, so their business plan blueprint, and also helping with your grant writing blueprint. We actually do the grant writing blueprint through what we call the Grant Hunter University. So it's an online course that you're able to walk through each element of what a grant needs. And we share our templates, successful templates that we've had, and just tips and tricks on how to answer questions for the grant so that you get all those questions answered first so that now you have it in a document. Because I remember with Detailing Nights, I used to apply, and because we were running a youth program teaching entrepreneurship, I kept thinking we were a shoe-in to get funding, but it kept getting declined. And it wasn't until we actually partnered with a nonprofit and brought on a grant writer to just review what we had been submitting, and they improved it, I would say, tenfold. And then when we were successful with that application, that became the blueprint. That became the template that we used for multiple grants that we had gone after and were successful with. So what we try to do is help you create that blueprint up front so that way you have it as a guide for any grant that you see. And now you're able to complete a grant that is 80% done because you've already done those questions, and the last 20% you can customize it. So we'll definitely follow up with you and see if you need support with getting any of these done, but just to let you know that that service is there. All right. So one tool, and I'm going to show you the spreadsheet because there's a few tools on here that I want to make sure that you know is available. Let's see. So when I get calls and people ask me, what grants are out there, what do I qualify for? I typically encourage them to, one, get access to the spreadsheet, and then two, fill out these three platforms. So the Business Benefits Finder, Happily.ai, and Hello Pocketed. So in the spreadsheet on the grant portal section, this allows you to answer questions about your business, and then these platforms search the internet and find different grants and funding that you qualify for, and then you're able to look through and see which ones are a match, and then I would say start the application. So once you find those that are a match, then you can connect with grant writers or support to review what you've written to get you help. But finding what you qualify for, this is typically the best first step. And you'll see on the spreadsheet, we try to highlight the grants that are, I'd say, currently active. You'll see the TELUS Stand With Owners grant is active, due September the 4th. And there's another one, the Start a Company Brampton grant. That one, they're doing their next info session September 8th, and they're going to be opening up applications. So if you're in Brampton, definitely check that one out. If not, if you're in a different city, each city has their own entrepreneur centers. So you want to reach out to your entrepreneur center, find out when the Start a Company grant is going to be live, and that way you'll be able to apply for it. But beyond that, on the section with for-profit grants. Again, in this area, you're able to check through and see what grants are available, and then also which grants are going to be coming, because some of them are ongoing or some of them uh, close and renew, or if it's closed, we'll let you know. But something like Digital Main Street, that's going to open up again. So we try to keep them up to date. So once it opens, this is going to turn green and we're going to send out a notification to say like, hey, this is open. Be sure that you apply. But anything that's ongoing, I always encourage people to review it and see if you qualify and then go for those grants. And then also on the nonprofit side, it's looking at what grants are there for community work. And a lot of times business owners will be talking to me and I'll let them know about different grants. And because it's not directed towards a for-profit, when they first look at it, they might think, oh, I don't qualify for that. But like I mentioned, getting creative, something that we did with Detailing Nights, is even though we were going for the Youth Opportunities Fund, which was part of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, by partnering with a nonprofit, that allowed us to strengthen our application, and other partnerships we've done where the nonprofit actually leads the application, but the business helps to execute. So you become a line item in the application. So you don't have to lead the nonprofit grant application, but you can still be part of it. So being able to find nonprofits that you align with their vision so that you're able to look at different grants that are out there and bring it to them, because that's what we did. We were partnered with a nonprofit. We said like, hey, we've been going for this grant. You want to see more youth get into entrepreneurship so that they're able to get employed. We do that already. We can go for this grant together. And that's how we were successful. So as you look through, you might see things that are geared towards nonprofit. But if you're a for-profit, I would look at what organization could you partner with that aligns with your mission and your values, and then see what grant you can go after together, or them as the lead, and you be able to be a part of the budgets that you can help them execute. All right. So like I mentioned, I'm going to put in the chats the link again, just for those that came in after. So you're able to get access to the spreadsheet. Oh, I put that in the wrong place. Sorry about that. All right. So this link will get you access to the spreadsheet. But for today, I wanted to introduce our guest because in the spreadsheet, it also shows different loan programs. And a lot of times we get fixated on grants because, yes, you're going to get money that you don't have to repay, but the timelines and the terms of grants might not fit what your business actually needs to execute, and especially the timelines. A lot of times you'll see grants that have 3 to 6 to 12 months of I'd say from application to money in your bank account. That type of timeline is difficult to operate your business. So looking at what loans are out there helps you with executing quicker. And then if you have a plan that allows you to outline how you're going to use that money to increase revenue and through sales, that increase in revenue will help you repay the loan amount. So that way it's almost like free money if the money you use to build your business, that'll help you pay back the loan. So different loans that I always tell people to keep an eye on are the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Programs through the FACE Coalition, the Black Opportunity Fund, the various banks, I believe RBC, CIBC, Scotiabank, and who else? BMO, all have Black Entrepreneur Loan Programs. And typically, I would say start with the bank that you're currently with to make sure that that relationship could probably get you across the finish line faster. But I would have conversations with all the banks, especially if you're looking for a specific set of money, to say, this is what I'm working on. Who can get me across the line, across the finish line fastest is who you should be banking with. But we do have a special guest today. So I wanted to stop sharing just for a sec and introduce Charles Kayitaba, because he's from Money Mint, and Charles can give us a bit more in-depth oversight on when we're looking for funding, especially loan products, how to best approach it. So Charles, I really appreciate you being here, brother.
No, and thank you for the opportunity. I'm extremely excited to impart whatever knowledge or wisdom that I can on the guests who are here on the Zoom call. So beautiful introduction. So again, thank you again for the opportunity to speak. Um, so yeah, I'll kind of just jump right in and kind of just parlay off of kind of some of the stuff you already said, jumping into the loan programs and things like that. I would say ultimately, there's a plethora of loan programs out in the market. Hundreds of them, right? Some as small as 50,000, some as small as big as millions, depending on the actual business, right? So I think the first thing that I'm going to assume the majority of the individuals here in this chat are probably speaking to new businesses, right? And needing money to get off the ground, mainly. Would that be correct or no?
Yeah, I would say that's fair. I would say within 3 years, probably between 50 to 250,000 in revenue.
Got it. Got it. So I would say the most popular loan program right now that's probably the most successful in terms of speed and access across all big five, they're all offering it, would be the Canadian Small Business Financing Program. All right. So that's up to $500,000, all right, towards a small business pre-revenue. So you don't even need to have financials or proof of income because that's mainly backed against the business plan that you put together, which you talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, all right, and projections, all right. So obviously working with an accountant and a team like myself, that's what we prepare. Business plans and projections will essentially is 50% of the battle when it comes to a program as such. Secondly, it's mainly for brick and mortar. So there's some sort of leasehold component. So whether you're doing a renovation or there needs to be equipment for your business. So the best case example would be like a restaurant, right? Where there's a lease, you're doing renovations, there's equipment, the bank would consider that as an asset, which they could then leverage up to a maximum of $500,000. And also, this would also be towards the purchasing of any new businesses. If there's anyone who has, let's say, in an investment thesis or focus, and they're going out and buying existing businesses, that could also be put towards there. Um, Now you mentioned a few great products like the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Program, right? Which you mentioned correctly. CIBC, RBC, BMO, Scotia, and BDC are the ones offering it. So it's always good because the banks always like to do this game where they'll advertise something, right? But when it comes to now the application process, you may get a different picture, right? Now, obviously, these programs are marketed to our community, no interest for the first year. And you kind of mentioned it in the graph, right? So they'll market it, but the adjudication, actual the approval process is another thing, right? As of right now in this market, um, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's successfully gone through that transaction from start to finish. And the reason why um, is because unfortunately, the economic market that we're in, lending is tough across the board, right? And a program that a basic loan program where they're charging 10% interest, which is pretty basic right now because it's backed by prime, is more advantageous in the bank because obviously the interest earned over the time of the loan, over the timeline of the loan, excuse me, is favors better in the interest of the bank in comparison to a program where, let's say, 250 or $500,000, which is for the Black Entrepreneurship Program, but they're not charging interest for the first year, right? So these are some of the things you have to take into consideration where obviously free money is great, right? But it may not be the solution that you may need in order to get your business off the ground and to the next, echelon that you need to get it to in terms of producing actual revenue, right? To get it from 250 to 500, 500 to a million and thereafter. I'm just trying to think.
And I was curious because you mentioned the business plan and cash flow projections are really important in the like putting together your application. What are some
100%.
of the, I want to say pitfalls, but things that you've noticed that entrepreneurs trip over when they're trying to apply for loans that a company like yours, or that we should be looking out for when we're going to go after this type of funding?
For sure. I would say the biggest thing is doing it yourself. I have a lot of
Uh,
solo entrepreneurs who will just, hey, I could just put together my own business plans or my own projections, right? Um, yes, you can, but chances are it's probably not going to be done at a certain degree as like a chartered accountant would be able to do it. So it's worth paying the couple $100 or even the $1,000 that they may charge you for those business plan and projections, because what they naturally want to see is, A, does this individual actually understand their business? Are they a good operator? And two, have they done the due diligence within their market in comparison to other businesses and their competitors that justifies the growth of this business if there's no existing revenue, right? Um, and also it looks good, right? It looks good in the eyes of a bank where it's like, okay, this guy, he hired someone to do the business plan and projections. So it shows a certain level of I would say not intelligence, but wherewithal, where he understands that they're not scratching and clawing, trying to do everything themselves. Because again, it's all about a picture when there's no real revenue coming into the business, right?
yeah, it totally makes sense. And I'm curious, so can you walk us through the process of working with like a company like yourself? So what, I guess you did mention the loan ranges, but are there things that we as business owners can prepare to now approach a company like yours, and exactly like the process you walk us through?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So usually it's pretty easy, and I'll probably say the process for applying for a grant that you take on, the first 25-30% is just really building rapport with the business, understanding their needs, the
Right.
niche, what market, and what's the capital need, right? From there, on a debt perspective, because we also only work with debt, I would say a few things that I've seen that really halted applications is taxes and credit, right? Those are probably I'll probably say the two. So having taxes and credit up to date is extremely, extremely important because understand that this is unsecured money. The bank isn't leveraging this against a property or like your own personal asset. This is money that's leveraged against the business. So the picture on everything else needs to look clear. If someone's asking for 200,000 or $300,000 unsecured, right? The bank wants to understand the financial position of that individual. How's their credit score like? Is it above 680? Is it above 650? Right? If it is a little bit lower, is it because maybe they leveraged it against real estate or debt or something like that, which makes sense because whenever you have a lot of assets, chances are you've done multiple credit hits, which brought your credit down. There's a story there that can make sense, right? But I would say those are probably the two biggest things. Because again, the bank, it's not like a mortgage where if you don't pay your mortgage, the bank will just take the house, right?
Right, right,
In a
right.
business, if they give you 300,000, they are and there's no revenue in the business yet, and they base the loan program off of your business plan and projections. There's no way for the bank to recoup their funds. If the business goes down, the money's gone.
It's a wash, right? Gotcha.
It's a
So
wash.
that's where the risk department is has
Correct.
their hairs on the back of their neck, like ready to pick out any issues.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, what I will say now to answer your second half of the question, the advantage is we walk you through all those steps up front. So our business is based off relationships. So both of anyone on my team or anyone of my business partners have 10 plus years of commercial banking at all of the big five. So we understand at a very high level the underwriting and the adjudication process that they're looking at, which allows us to put together the business plans, that allows us to put together the projections and set up the underwriting, the initial part of that file, that first 30%, before we even present it to the bank. We have all our ducks in line.
No, that's solid. And again, I wanted to open it up to questions to see if the audience had any specific questions they had for you. But as we're checking if people have questions or if they put it in the chat, what would be, I'll say, that call to action from you as we, because people have a certain, I don't want to say anxiety around loans. So being
Mhm.
in the space, how do you approach it and support those that are going to be getting that type of funding to make sure that they feel at ease with going through this kind of path?
I would say it's just simply going through the numbers, right?
Mm.
Understanding that at the end of the day, we need money to grow. And grants are obviously great. Wherever we can grab free money, I'm a proponent for it. Take it as much
Right.
as you can. But sooner or later, that's going to run out, right? And the real scalability, and like we've talked about before, Ryan, is a mix between grant and debt, right? And most of the debt loans are a lot larger than the grants. Um, so yeah, up to the first 200, 250,000, you can probably do it with very little capital, and some grant. Just be if you're service-based business, there's no large receivables, you get paid relatively quickly from the end user, right? But once you start hitting $500,000, $300,000 in top line revenue, and you want to scale that business to 750 million plus, well, then you're looking to hire a team. You need to do marketing, right? And it's really just understanding the cost. So how much you have to spend to obtain that client. Now, once we're able to figure out that number, we can then reverse engineer how much money you really need. Because also we don't want to over leverage you. We don't need to take all the money, right? Even though you can get 300,000, you qualify for 300,000, but do you really need that much money? Maybe you only need 150, right?
Right, right.
Based off of your cost per lead, or yeah, cost per lead is what we call it, right? And as soon as you know how much money it takes to get one paid customer, from there you can structure, okay, the debt essentially, because obviously you're paying on that.
Yeah, it makes sense. No, I love that. And so just before we close out, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand or you can unmute. But again, I'm looking forward to getting this perspective and your tips and tricks out to the community to let them know, hey, don't go into this process on your own. But Eddie, feel free to go ahead. You want to unmute?
Sorry, I came in late. You're just as I was entering the call, you were saying some of us like myself that would be looking to acquire businesses and using grants and a mix of loans and grants. Sorry, can you pitch that back for me, just so I could understand how would that play about in the eyes of the lenders?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'll let Ryan tackle the grant part. But in terms of buying a business, right? There's two things. Well, there's three main things that the banks are going to determine um the ability to loan out against that business. Obviously the industry that it's in. Some industries favor better than others. For example, hospitality obviously took the biggest hit over COVID. So banks aren't crazy over people acquiring restaurants and things like that, unless maybe you have an extensive background in history of working in restaurants, or maybe you already own a restaurant, you're just expanding now. That's a
Right.
different story, right? But things like where there's a lot of assets or leasehold, like manufacturing companies, plumbing companies, things like that, industrial, or even e-commerce, which is coming up pretty aggressively now. Banks are starting to be a little bit more favorable on. So the industry and your personal experience, work experience, I would say is the biggest thing. And then everything else is manageable. How was the company performing over the last couple of years? All right. You yourself as an operator, is it going to be owner operated, or are you just going to own it and hire and keep the managing staff there? That way there's not a lot of turnover, right? These are some of the questions and some of the things you want to hash out that will determine the level of financing you'll get. And when I say level, I mean loan to purchase. So again, let's say you're purchasing a business for 100 grand. All right. Most banks are going to give you anywhere between, depending on the industry, 65 to 90% of that purchase price. Right. Industry, again, number one, and then all those other factors like your personal self, uh, uh, personal net worth and credit will come into play.
The history of the business that you're acquiring, the banks are looking at more than 24 months, or 2 years, or 5 years is kind of like, even though I think 5 years is ideal, but we'll see. But yeah,
Honestly, realistically, only 2 years. If you have 2 years financials of the existing business, it's usually more than enough.
and did you want to? So if I should give you a profit and loss of just of last year, 2023, and then 2022, just that itself, or did you want to see the details of during that 24 months of how it fluctuated, if the cash
Well,
flow
yeah,
fluctuated?
so they're going to want to see obviously a positive linear, right, over the last 24 months to see that business is growing. But if not, if let's say it's in a decline, well, why is it in a decline? Is the owner 80 years old and he's not really there in the business? He's only there part-time, right? It's again, there's a story section to it. So everything can be mitigated. But in a perfect world, yes, they would ask for 2 years financials. They want to see positive growth in the business, and they'll also ask for interims. If it's not the year end yet, they'll also want to see 2020 year to date on the 2024 to see how the business is operating. Again, to show a positive linear, and then we'll still need to put together projections in the business plan to see how you can either multiply that or improve that.
Excellent. Yeah, appreciate that. And again, I want to thank everyone, especially you, Charles, for taking time to be here to give this insight. Please do put your contact info into the chat, and I'll put ours as well, so you can send us an email for those that have additional questions or want to go through the process to get loan funding, or if you need support with getting grant funding. Both of our emails are there, and we're going to be sending out the recording. So definitely review as you're thinking of what grants or funding or loans you want to go for, and be sure to get access to the spreadsheets. I'll put that in again if you didn't see, so that we're going to keep it as up to date as possible. Actually, Charles, I'll ask you if we can put your contact info into the spreadsheet, so if people are looking for loans, they know that your contact is there so that they can ask questions. But again, brother, I really appreciate you being here. And for everyone else, have a great rest of the day, and looking forward to supporting you with your funding journey. So have a good one.